This news update is about Richard Anthony Jones, who was in jail for 17 years for a crime he didn't commit. You might know who this is, you might not, but either way I will go through a bit of the story of how he ended up in jail for a crime he didn't commit. But what I wanted to talk about was the 1.1 million lawsuit that he won because of the fact that he was in jail for that crime.
A fairly different type of redemption story. A man who maintained his innocence through almost 17 years in prison has finally been released, thanks to his own detective work helping track down his own look-alike. Turns out, looks can be deceiving. Here's ABC's Alex Perez.
Finally free. After 17 years behind bars, a man who says he was wrongfully convicted, returning to loving arms.
I hope and prayed every day for this day to come, and when it finally got here, it was an overwhelming feeling.
Richard Jones's nightmare over after tracking down another prisoner, his doppelganger, and the discovery casting doubt on his guilty verdict.
I believe it was a striking resemblance. It just blew me away.
Nearly 20 years ago, Jones was charged with aggravated robbery in Kansas City, Kansas, after being accused of trying to steal a purse in a parking lot. Jones had provided an alibi, and no physical evidence ever linked him to the crime.
So you have now seen the recording, the news recording of that incident where he got arrested for a crime he didn't commit and then was put in jail for 17 years. That should have given you a little bit of an example of what I'm about to talk about. And it is an injustice, but it is uncanny how much they look like each other. And even Richard himself said he was even surprised, as you heard, of how much this guy looks like him. But he won a lawsuit of 1.1 million because of the 17 years that he was put in jail for, and rightly so. He should have been compensated for that, regardless of how much this guy looked like him, because when you read the circumstances of how this man was caught for a crime he didn't commit, it is a little bit of a piss take. But I'll explain further. As you can see, it explains Richard Anthony Jones spent 17 years in prison for a crime he says was committed by his doppelganger. Now he will receive a $1.1 million settlement in a lawsuit that was resolved under a new mistaken conviction law, Kansas officials announced Tuesday. So the news recording I just showed you was in 2017, not long after he was released from jail for the 17 years he was put in. And this is obviously recently, it says 2 hours and 47 minutes ago. So this is a recent thing that he has won this lawsuit of $1.1 million, which is brilliant. But that doesn't give him back those 17 years. But it says, we are committed to faithfully administering the new mistake conviction statute and legislature enacted, Kansas Attorney General Derek Smidich said in a statement. So this is something that I think he is the first person to use this law and win, which is a good thing. There are so many people in jail who shouldn't be in jail, even because of the way they are interrogated by the police. Sometimes the police forces them into giving a guilty conviction to themselves, basically, so they can convict them. They basically make them say they committed a crime they didn't commit. But you can see how similar these guys look. This guy went in saying he was not guilty of the crime, but when you go down and you look at what happened, it said Jones was convicted in the 1999 aggravated robbery of a woman in Walmart parking lot. Jones had a solid alibi. He was at a birthday party where he was seen by several people, but he was blamed for the crime anyway because he looked almost exactly like the man who eventually became the suspect. This man is not in jail, even though his picture is up here. So this is the guy who was in jail for a crime he didn't commit, and this is the guy who committed the crime. He's not in jail. Okay, when I go down, it will make sense. The eyewitness identified the criminal as a light-skinned Hispanic or African-American man named Rick, who had long hair pulled back. Look at their names. This man is named Ricky Amos, and this man is named Richard Anthony Jones. This is the man who was released. So basically, both their names are Ricky. It gets weirder and weirder. Okay. It says an eyewitness wrote down the license plate number of the car involved in the robbery. Investigators tracked down the driver of the car who led them to the house where Rick lived. So they went to the house because obviously this man committed the crime even though he's not in jail. They went to his house, okay, and still he wasn't arrested, okay, but this man was arrested and put in jail for 17 years. So there is a bit of, for me, there's something not right here. There is a little bit of an injustice here, even though they do look a lot alike. Then the driver went to the precinct where he looked through booking photos of people with the name Richard and Rick that matched the description the victim and the security guard had given. Well, they both look the same, you know. The driver ID'd Jones as Rick. So they ID'd the guy who went to jail as him, okay? So did the victim during a preliminary hearing and later at trial. But at the time of the robbery, Jones was at his girlfriend's birthday party where several guests testified they saw him, and he had spent the next day watching movies with the girlfriend and cleaning up after the party. So even though he had an alibi, and even though they went to this guy's house and these guys look the same, okay, remember that he still looks like himself, obviously, this guy was still taken in as somebody who committed the crime because he looked like him. It is just a crazy situation. His alibi didn't sway the jury, okay, so they couldn't convince the jury because he looked so much alike, and he was sentenced to 19 years in prison, okay. He came out 2 years early. That was it. He appealed and he lost, okay, as well. So he had been trying to get out because he knew he was innocent. It says the team from the Innocent Project eventually tracked down who they believe is the real Rick. He is Ricky Lee Amos, who looks strikingly similar to Jones and who had lived at the address linked to the crime, because they, like I said up here, they went to his house because of his number plate, okay? It's crazy. Along with the 1.1 million, the court ordered on Tuesday the following relief for Jones: a certificate of innocence, record of his arrest and conviction to be expunged, which I think goes without saying. You shouldn't have to go back and ask for that. That should be what just happens when you are found innocent of a crime. That's ridiculous to me that you have to go back. But this part is what strikes me, and it says, I don't think so, because it's not Ricky's fault that this happened, which is in a way true, but ultimately he was the one, we believe, who was responsible for the crime, Craig said. Ricky has never admitted to the crime, and I think Jones was somewhat disappointed that he didn't admit to it, okay? The reason why he is not in jail for this crime is because of this part here, and it says the statute of limitations on the crime has passed. So if there was a case against Amos, he cannot be prosecuted because of what the law. So the law is basically allowing a criminal to get away. That's the law. Does that make any sense? No. The whole law in most countries needs to be revamped, started again and scratched. But it's never going to happen. But these types of things, even though this is crazy how much they look like each other, will keep happening, and the law needs to work.